Hello and welcome to the Rotoworld Baseball Show. My name is DJ Short and I'm joined here by my friend Christopher Crawford. If you listen to this show for only this season, you'll notice that we are not Eric Samolsky or Scott Pianowski. They're getting some well-deserved time off, but Chris and I go way back with this show, a number of years. And it's fun to get a chance to get together to talk about baseball today, just like old times. But
Sure.
I'm sure we will go off on tangents of other topics as well. Chris, what's up, man? I'm excited to have you here.
Excited to be here. It's been fun. It's been a great being back with Rotoworld. It's been a fun couple of months of the first season back. I'm having a hoot and a holler, and anyone who tries to tell me that's just a distance and not a thing is a real jerk.
So we had some late breaking news this morning. We're recording Monday morning or Monday afternoon. It's 1:00 Eastern time right now. But Connor Norby, the Orioles are reportedly set to call him up as they keep churning out these position player prospects. So I'm not sure what to think of this situation as far as whether. Obviously, Jackson Holliday at some point will return. Kobe Mayo is in the mix too. There's just so many mouths to feed in this system that I'm really not sure what to do fantasy-wise. But tell me what you know about Norby and if fantasy managers should be excited.
So I think long-term you should be excited about Norby. I'm not so sure about in the short term. This was a guy who was a second-round pick in 2021. And has done nothing but perform. 2023 had an 842 OPS in Norfolk. 2024 slashing 286, 374, 510, 9 homers, 7 stolen bases. He's a guy who's capable of playing in the infield and the outfield. There's no real standout plus tool, but that's okay. Everything has a chance to be average to above average. And when you combine that, you get a pretty good real life player. Maybe not an elite fantasy upside type of player. I can see him being a top of the order type of guy because he has a pretty good approach at the plate. Does strike out quite a bit. 137 strikeouts last year tells that story. I think he's an interesting play, but I think he is more of a utility option. And look, everybody's wondering probably why not Jackson Holliday? I think they want to get Jackson Holliday settled in again. And he's starting to play better over the last 10 games. He's the patience at the plate remains the same. And that's the most exciting thing to me about Jackson Holliday is the fact that he is still showing that same approach, even as the hits aren't dropping. But I think they want to get him get him comfortable and have him have some path to success, knowing that maybe you're not wanting Jackson Holliday after that dreadful run to have some more struggles out there. Long story short, I think Connor Norby may be an interesting AL only play, but in redraft leagues, I'm probably letting him go.
Yeah, I think a little bit with what's going on with the Orioles right now. There's just so much depth in this system. And, we saw it in the Corbin Burns trade too. They let go of some talented young players in that trade.
Mm-hmm.
But we could see, this is a showcasing time perhaps for the Orioles as they look to improve going into the trade deadline. John Means, Tyler Wells, both are undergoing surgery on their UCLs. So they're done for the season. They still are hanging in there, holding their own with the starting rotation. But certainly I think they're going to need some depth there. It's just a matter of whether they aim high and maybe part with a top prospect or, someone like Norby could get them a rental or something like that, something to watch moving forward. But for this show today, we're going to go over some weekend headlines, and then we are going to discuss my June power rankings. I put all of the teams in order from 1 to 30 as the calendar flips to June. So we'll discuss some of the risers and fallers over the past month. So let's get started with some of these weekend headlines. And you know what the Yankees need, Chris? Even more help. Gerrit Cole. He's slated to make his first minor league rehab start Tuesday with AA Somerset. Cole is slated to throw around 50 pitches for that first start. So probably will make it at least 2, maybe 3 rehab starts before joining the Yankees later this month. Cole went down, of course, during spring training with right elbow nerve irritation, but he's checked all the boxes so far as he approaches this first rehab start. Of course, ramping it up in a competitive game situation will be the big test here. Setbacks always possible, but it's scary to think what the Yankees could be if he's Gerrit Cole, we know, right?
Yeah, I mean, this team is just stupid good. And it to me, it's fun. I think baseball is better when the Yankees are like this. Like, I don't want the Yankees to be heads and shoulders above everybody, but it's fun when you have the powers like the Yankees at the top of the league. And look, it's easy to forget that Gerrit Cole was so dang good last year. 2.63 ERA, 222 strikeouts against 48 walks over those 33 starts, a 15-4 record, which is kind of crazy that he only got to the 15 wins with how good that he's been. And this is a starting rotation that's actually pretty good right now, too, which is going to be interesting to see what kind of decisions they make going forward when Cole's ready. I think the one thing to keep in mind here is if there is any sign of setback or not being super comfortable because of how good the Yankees have been, they're going to be extremely precautious. Like, he threw 43 pitches in that simulated game before that. You mentioned that he's going to throw 50. I would imagine the next time he goes to 65, the time after that, probably to 80. That's generally how those bumps go, 10 to 15 pitches right along there. So that puts him back sometime around end of June, right? Yeah, that's about what we're looking at. It wouldn't shock me if there's like a little bit of like, what if we're careful here? What if we wait until after the All-Star break to make sure this guy is healthy? But either way, if he's still somehow available in leagues, or if somebody's looking to move that IL spot and make that trade, I'm going to get him, because in terms of just pure upside, how many starting pitchers can you name that have more upside than Gerrit Cole?
No, I mean, it's crazy to see, what's kind of happened with the top of the board fantasy wise for pitchers, because, a Spencer Strider, then you're like, oh, Gerrit Cole's safe. He's as safe as it gets. And then he goes down as well. So nobody's truly safe. I think that's what we've learned over the past several months for sure. But what the Yankees have done with this rotation has been really incredible. Luis Gil has been amazing, had a great month of May. We'll see how many innings he's allowed to throw. I think that's going to be a key question for the Yankees moving forward. But Clark Schmidt also recently went down due to injury. So, things have a way of working themselves out when you're saying, hey, we have 6 dudes for 5 spots. Like, injuries will find a way. So we'll see what happens here with Cole. But obviously great news for Yankees fans who don't really need great news right now. The Twins, though, are slated to get Royce Lewis back from the injured list, which is pretty cool. Of course, Lewis went down on opening day with a severe quad strain, which was such a bummer. I mean, we've been saying this for years, if Lewis can only stay healthy, but he finished up his minor league rehab assignment over the weekend, expected to join the Twins on Tuesday. One interesting wrinkle of this move, though, is the Twins will reportedly send Eddie Julien down to AAA. And Julien had a really nice rookie season last year, but
he
has struggled so far this year, hitting 207 with a 676 OPS. Over 58 games this season. Are you surprised to see the Twins send Julien down?
So if you would have told me before the season, I'd be absolutely surprised. Based on how they're constructed and based on how he struggled, I'm not terribly surprised by it. He's just got to figure out that aggressive, or how to become more assertive at the plate. Like, there's just too many times where it looks like Julien is just going up there hoping for a walk, and it's just not working out. There's too many good pitchers. I like Edouard Julien, but I just feel like he's more of a platoon type of guy too. And that's another concern for me, is that I don't think he's ever going to be a guy who ever mashes left-handed pitching. So I'm not terribly surprised. I still think there's reason for long-term optimism because his approach at the plate is good. There's some sneaky pop in that bat. He's actually gotten better defensively. That was a huge concern with Julien. For me, was just like, where the heck is this guy going to play? And if he's a designated hitter, he doesn't have that type of run production that you really are looking for from a guy who is being a DH. But he's good enough, I think, defensively to play somewhere. But I can't say I'm terribly surprised. I am disappointed, though, because I had more than my few shares of Julien to begin the season, and it has not worked
out. Jose Miranda has earned his chance to stay with the Twins. I think we're going to see a lot of Willie Castro at second base with Julien in the minors, but Miranda's been really good at third base, and he had a pretty promising rookie season 2 years ago. Last year, he dropped off, but so far this year, 280, 6 homers, 780 OPS. We'll see how the Twins mix and match. I'll be interested to see if maybe Lewis, gets a couple days a week out of the DH spot as he gets eased back into things. So I'm excited to see Royce Lewis back. I just hope he can stay on the field for the foreseeable future for sure, because he has the chance to be a fantasy stud. He's proven that.
Yeah.
A couple other injuries worth noting here. Blake Snell left his start Sunday against the Yankees due to groin tightness, seemingly recurring symptoms for him. He had a previous IL stint in late April. Snell, of course, signed late in spring training that 2-year, $62 million deal with the Giants, has a 9.51 ERA over 6 starts this season. Just can't seem to get it going. The late start. He said he didn't face any major league hitters until he came up to join the Giants. I mean, so hasn't been able to really get in a groove, injured as well. Not great there for Snell. We should also mention Jordan Romano, the Blue Jays closer. He's injured again. Laying on the IL with the same injury that he went down with and missed the start of the season, right elbow inflammation. That doesn't sound great. We should learn more about that soon, but I don't think we're going to see him. I wouldn't expect to see him in June. I'll put it that way.
No.
Yimi Garcia. Yeah. Exactly.
No, don't, please go ahead. All I was going to say is it seems like they kind of rushed Romano back. Like, based on how they were talking about that injury to start the season, the fact that he was back as soon as he was really surprised me. And if you look at fastball velocity, he's still throwing 96.4. So, but that's not always telling about an injury. Like, just because a guy's throwing hard does not mean that he is 100%. We've seen that an awful lot, but I do kind of wonder if they rushed him back.
So Yimi Garcia is the pickup in the Jays bullpen. Already picked up a save on Sunday. He's been awesome this year as a 1.57 ERA. So if he hasn't been scooped up in your league, you should do it, but he might be already. Big news out of Detroit, Spencer Torkelson has been demoted to AAA. Torkelson had some momentum in fantasy leagues after hitting 19 home runs in the second half last year, but he's hit just 201 with 4 home runs over 230 plate appearances so far this season. Really struggling against velocity. He's hit just 179 against fastballs this season. Not striking out more than last year, but quality contact is way down. What do you think of Torkelson? Obviously, the expectations were super high as a number 1 pick, a first baseman number 1 pick. Doesn't happen super often, but so far it's been a bit of a mixed bag, maybe a lot worse than good so far for Torkelson in the majors.
Yeah, and I was pretty optimistic coming into it, not only just based on what he did in college and based on his pedigree, but also that second half that you mentioned. But to say he's earned these numbers is the understatement of understatements. Expected batting average, 192. Expected slugging percentage, 325. Expected WOBA, 258. He's only barreling the baseball 4.5% of the time. It's kind of funny looking at it. If you were looking at just the batting run, base running value, and the fielding value, you would think this is a fast infielder because his base running value is in the 68th percentile and everything else is in the 10th percentile or below. And the thing to keep in mind here with Torkelson is he's not a good defensive player either. So the fact that he's hurting them defensively on top of offensively, I think he's going to be in AAA for a while. I do want to say Justin Henry Malloy is somebody that I'm interested in. He has a really good approach at the plate, acquired in the Jimenez deal with Atlanta. Seems like 5 years ago, but I think it was only 2 years ago. He does strike out a ton, but he puts the ball into the gaps. He has a great approach. If you're in an OBP league, I'm extremely interested in him because of the fact that he's just drawn walks everywhere that he's gone. Has looked okay in the outfield. So I think that's an interesting little play. But Torkelson, I think he just got to cut bait. I just can't imagine him at that position being somebody that you can hold onto on your roster.
So Malloy, 410 on base percentage over 351 minor league games, has a 410 OBP in AAA this year too. So yeah, I mean, it's been a struggle for almost, I want to say almost every prospect hitter who's been called up this year. There's been that little bit of an adjustment period, if not a player demoted right back to AAA. So it'll be interesting to see with a guy like you mentioned, who has that kind of approach. Will it be a little bit different for him as opposed to some of these other hitters that we've seen?
Yeah, Yeah, and we'll see if it carries over. We've seen plenty of guys who are walk machines in the minors who don't have that same approach in the majors. They either press or, oh, these hitters are challenging me. This is different than I'm used to. Well, how am I going to handle this? But everything I've heard about Malloy is that he's going to be a guy who works counts, who recognizes pitches well. Wouldn't expect him to help in the average category, and we're not talking about elite power, but I can see him helping in some categories, and again, especially in that OBP.
Ranger Suarez has been one of the best pitchers in baseball so far this season, but got a bit of a scare on Saturday. He was hitting his left hand, his pitching hand, by 106.1 mile per hour comebacker. It's got to hurt. X-rays came back negative. Manager Rob Thompson said he's improving, but his status for this week is unclear. The Phillies, of course, are headed to London this weekend to take on the Mets. They also have a couple of off days, so they could, if they want to play it safe, navigate their way through that and maybe don't pitch him this weekend in London. So I think that's something to keep an eye on. And if you need to set your lineup today before first pitch, I might leave Suarez inactive for this week. One player I definitely will leave inactive on the Phillies, Brandon Marsh. Not looking good for him. He left Sunday's game with a right hamstring strain. He immediately signaled for the trainers, limped off the field. I'm expecting an IL stint there. We should know more at some point on Monday or Tuesday, but I think he's IL bound. And something really interesting, Vlad Jr. is a third baseman again. he made his he made his first start at third base since 2019. This past weekend. This move is designed on getting both Justin Turner and Daniel Vogelbach into the lineup on certain days, which is a really sad sentence to me, but I guess this the state of the Blue Jays right now.
Both former Mets, had the exact same level of success with the I can't help. The Justin Turner thing. By the way, Justin Turner has been absolutely horrendous in May. Mm-hmm. Like really, really bad. Not fun to watch for a guy who I've liked watching for a very long time. Mm-hmm. And I know that Atkins has come out and said, in fact, he said hard pass when asked about trades involving Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Bo Bichette. Yeah, I can't help but wonder if that's a little bit of a thing to show. Look at what my guy can do playing a little bit of third base for me as well. I can't help but wonder it because I look at that division and I look at what's going on with the Blue Jays right now. Tough for me to see them being a real playoff contender, and certainly tough for me to see them being a World Series contender, and that should ultimately be the goal for an organization that has not won it since 1993. I can't help but wonder if that's something where you're putting that guy out to show him that he can play a little bit of third, but it's for the Blue Jays. It's interesting, certainly interesting from the fantasy perspective as well, because if you have Vladimir Guerrero Jr. eligible at a position that, let's just be honest, DJ, has not been very good to fantasy managers over the last decade or so, it sure seems like that certainly makes him a lot more interesting play for 2025 as well. And 2024, if he gets that eligibility as well.
And it seems like something that's going to happen on a semi-regular basis. So I do think he'll get that 5-game plateau very soon, which will be helpful in Yahoo leagues. But, some others go with 5 games. Some others are more. But, I think it's interesting to think about a trade. I mean, we do know that Vlad Jr. loves playing third base. It's his favorite position.
Sure.
I think maybe it's also a little bit maybe psychological there, where the Blue Jays are thinking, hey, if we get him a little more active than just playing first base, maybe it triggers something at the plate, because we shouldn't overlook the fact that he continues to disappoint, at least relative to expectations offensively. But I think the Blue Jays could be forced to make some tough decisions. It would be unfortunate if they're trading these guys when their value is kind of down from what they're capable of doing, but that's also why they're underperforming as a team to this point.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think if you're going to see one of those guys move, I think Bo Bichette's going to end up being a long-term Blue Jay. Like, I think that he's the guy that, because he's improved so much defensively at shortstop, and I know he got off to an absolutely dreadful start, but it's been pretty solid since then. I think that he's the guy but I do think that one of those two guys is probably going to get moved, and it wouldn't shock me all that much if one of them got moved before July 31st.
Very interesting. So just a quick word for our listeners here. The field continues to narrow as we draw closer to champions being crowned at the French Open. Find out who advances on the clay courts of Roland Garros by streaming matches on Peacock today through Sunday. Definitely check that out on Peacock. Like I said at the start of the show, I unveiled my power rankings for the month of June. So we'll go over the top 10 right now and some of the teams that are rising in the ranks right now. So it should be no surprise after I led with Gerrit Cole. The Yankees have taken over the number 1 spot. I have the Phillies number 2. The Phillies were the first team in the majors to get to 40 wins, but the Yankees currently have the best record by percentage points in Major League Baseball. It still was a tough choice for me between the Yankees and the Phillies, but I just think the Yankees are rolling a little bit better right now than where the Phillies are.
Yeah, I think that it's tough for me to say anybody's better than the Yankees. By the way, saw a stat today that Aaron Judge has an OPS plus of 200, Juan Soto plus 189. The last time there were 2 hitters with a plus 189 OPS on the same team, Garrett and Ruth. That's the last time that has happened. So that just tells you how unbelievably good those guys have been. They've got a great rotation, like we mentioned. Clay Holmes, outside of one game against my Seattle Mariners, has been absolutely outstanding. That bullpen has so much talent. Look what they've done with like Luke Weaver. Look what they've done with an arm like that. A guy who was, some people looked at him getting guaranteed money and wondering, what the heck are they doing? Like, why? Because he's been so awful, and he's been a massive part of that bullpen success, getting some guys healthy again. I just don't think anybody but the Yankees can be at the top of the list. But at the same time, the Phillies are awesome. Like I talked about this a bunch before the season. I think they have the team that is best set together to compete in October and through the regular season. Like everything that you have is built for not only being really, really good and getting you into that postseason, but once you're in that postseason, I'm not sure there's a team that's better equipped to go win a lot of games. And that includes the Dodgers. That includes a bunch of really good teams. So those are pretty clearly your 1, 2. And if you wanted to argue the Phillies were the best, I wouldn't. Well, I'd probably argue with anyway, because it's a lot of fun.
Argue with Phillies fans, fun. What?
Well,
what's interesting about the Phillies, they've done this over the past month without Trey Turner. He did have a little bit of a setback recently, so maybe he's still a few more weeks away, but the Phillies still look really solid. And to your point about the postseason success, we learned this 2 years ago when they took out the Braves, that they have the perfect core for a postseason run. They have the power in the lineup. They have a top-heavy starting rotation. Ranger Suarez, we'll see if he can keep it up. But, you still have Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola in that rotation. To me, they're perfectly suited for the postseason. And, they're built for the long haul. They're a really good team.
Real quick, too, is like, even with a long-term injury, with Christopher Sanchez, we need to revisit the Christopher Sanchez for Curtis Mead trade, because that was one that was getting, it on quite a bit, talking about what a win for. If you're Tampa Bay, would you want to do that trade if you could? Would you rather have Christopher, especially knowing what you have in like Junior Caminero and some other infielder guys? Would you maybe think about undoing that trade?
Oh, I think so. I mean, the Rays are an active team on the trade front, so I guess mistakes are going to happen. But certainly,
I was just going to say real quick, there is this idea that the Tampa Bay Rays never lose trades, and it's absolutely nonsense. You just don't remember them because the ones they win by so much. Randy Arozarena, hello. Like, there are just so many deals that they make. John Jaso is a deal that they lost, as I remember, because I'm wearing this hat right now. There are trades that the Tampa Bay Rays make that are not good, and I just take them down a peg or two.
You know what I think is, going back to the Yankees for a second, but Anthony Volpe had a disappointing rookie season. And I think all of the attention on Judge and Soto has maybe allowed him to relax. Of course, another year of experience at the major league level, but he's looked like a very different hitter this year, much more comfortable at the plate, better plate discipline. Again, I think experience helps, but I think the lengthening that lineup, even with adding Alex Verdugo into the mix, has helped take the pressure off a little bit on Volpe, who's been awesome.
he's been fantastic. And like, he's going to be a long-term star. I think it's weird that he's only 23 years old. Like, there is still a long way to go. And, we talk about lineup protection, and it's tough to prove. But when you've got those two guys sitting behind you, it's not as hard to prove. Like,
yeah,
you are going to challenge him, and he still has a well above average walk rate. His whiff rate is among the best. Well, not the best in baseball, but 21.1 for a 23-year-old is outstanding. Does he have elite bat speed? No. Is he going to hit 40 home runs? No. But he's going to contribute in a lot of categories, and I think he'll just keep getting better in the second half as well.
So I have the Cleveland Guardians at number 3. They were number 3 last month as well. And, if you wanted to be skeptical about that a month ago, I would have totally understood it. I really wasn't sure what to think of the Guardians a month ago, but that they've managed to maintain this performance has been incredible. Jose Ramirez basically drove in a run like every time he was up in the month of May. David Fry has been huge for that lineup. I don't think this team is going anywhere in this division right now, although it is a competitive division, sans White Sox, but the Royals are right there as well. But hey, I think the Guardians are the real deal.
I'm starting to believe more anyway. And I think you have to give a ton of credit to their player development staff, that they have taken a team that I saw projected to go second, third in the division, some people thinking fourth, has become the favorite to win a good division. Like, I joked on Twitter that the AL Central became the AL West so fast that nobody noticed. Like, the reverse of those splits has been just absolutely crazy. But they can pitch. Jose Ramirez remains one of the most underrated superstars in baseball. They just got Stephen Kwan back, who's going to really help that lineup as well. They have a farm system that they can go make some moves. It'd be nice if they make some moves for players that made less than the minimum, but that would be, and that's probably just not going to happen here. Like, unfortunately, their success is probably a little bit of their undoing a little bit too, because their ownership group is going to look at this and say, "Ooh, see, we don't need to spend a whole heck of a lot of money to be good." But this team is complete. Like, they need to go get, I think, still a middle of the order hitter in order to justify being a top 3 team. But everything they've done so far in 2024 suggests that they're pretty darn legit.
So rolling out the rest of the top 10 here, I have the Orioles at number 4. They were number 2 last month. I still think they're great. The Yankees, though, have taken charge in the AL East. The Orioles are plus 260 to win the American League East. If you want to speculate, throw a few dollars out there, I would consider doing that, even though I think the Yankees are awesome. But we'll see what happens with Gerrit Cole. Giancarlo Stanton has an injury history, obviously. So does Aaron Judge. So anything could happen there. I wouldn't mind, speculating on that one. The Dodgers, I have at number 5, down a little bit from last month, but they are still well in control of the NL West. The Brewers at number 6 this month. They were number 7 last month. I was a little skeptical, kind of like the Guardians, if they would be able to maintain their top 10 status, but they have the largest division lead in all of baseball as we flip the calendar to June, which is pretty surprising.
Yeah, no question about it. And I'm a little mad at the Brewers because they made me work really hard on Sunday, because they first they put the 2 guys that have played in every game, Willy Adames and William Contreras, out of the lineup. Then they bring them back in, and it was just a lot of writing, and I just don't appreciate that. They are a quality team. Joey Ortiz needs more attention. Joey Ortiz has been really good for them. And look, Joey Ortiz would be like the 14th best infielder on Baltimore. So I totally understand that trade, but that doesn't mean Milwaukee did bad here, because Joey Ortiz, 293, 391, 503. And it's not a small sample size. It's 52 games. He doesn't get a chance to drive in a lot of runs because he's usually hitting in the bottom of the lineup. But I think he's going to start moving up that lineup, especially with how well he's performed. The approach has been outstanding. If Joey Ortiz is available, like in a trade or in a deeper league, however you can get him, I would want him on my roster. And you also bring up that Devin Williams is probably going to be a part of this team in a couple of weeks or a couple of months as well. Excuse me. That just makes a pretty solid pitching staff even better.
Yeah, exactly. They look legit. The Cardinals are starting to move up a little bit. I feel a little better about them than I did a few weeks ago. They're one of the risers over the past month in my rankings. So the Royals I have at number 7. They're moving up in the ranks. The Braves at number 8. Your Mariners at number 9. They're staying in the same spot they were last month. Let's do a temperature check on the Mariners, how you're feeling right now. Obviously, they won a series over the weekend. The pitching staff is great.
Yes.
Brian Wu, I'm a little worried about. I don't know what's going on there with his arm. It feels like every start they say something afterwards, like his arm's sparking, and I'm like, that's a little scary, you know?
It is.
And Julio Rodriguez still hasn't really hit his stride offensively. So the fact that they've gotten off to this start and we haven't seen the best of Julio yet, like that's a little scary.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like this rotation, even with the Brian Wu situation, there are 4 guys who could pitch at or near the top of a rotation for you in Castillo, Kirby, Gilbert, and Miller. Miller was absolutely outstanding in that last outing. Boy, the Angels are bad. I know we'll get to the Angels, but they are very, very difficult to watch. I'm still concerned about this offense. Now, they did fire their offensive coordinator, which is still such a weird thing to say for a baseball term. Brant Brown. It's interesting. They fired Brant Brown and they scored 9, 5, and 5. So it is, you know, a small sample. It's magic. That's just how it works. The offensive coordinator might as well just be named scapegoat. Like you are, if you're there and things are going bad, you're going to be the first guy who gets going. But Julio's interesting. Like you take a look, the numbers are not where we want them to be. The average has been okay. The on-base percentage, not really. He's providing some value with the steals, but he seems to just not get off to great starts. Like 2022 wasn't great to begin the year. 2023, not great. And some people you just can't simulate timing with. I have seen enough good things from him to say that he's going to be awesome. And like you bring up in the article, his defense, who knew that Julio Rodriguez was going to become this defensively? Anybody who says that they knew it is a liar, because this was a guy that was definitely going to be right field, above average speed or so. No, he's one of the fastest players in baseball, the type of guy that you would want in your secondary, speaking of offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators. But yeah, I think that they're probably the favorite to win this division. It's a little bit darning with faint praise, though, because the rest of this division has issues.
Yeah, for sure. We will get into that as well. It's interesting you mentioned Julio with the slow starts, because I think Mets fans are experiencing that with Francisco Lindor. Once he starts to produce like the numbers at the back of the baseball cards, like Mets fans will say, "Oh, he's doing this now, and it's garbage time," because like the Mets are not playing well. Like, where was this in April? But I do think certain players are like that, right? They need a little bit of time to get in a groove offensively. We're seeing that with Lindor right now too. He's started to turn it around. Like I said, the Cardinals, one of the biggest risers over the past month. I do have the Twins at number 10. I have the Padres at number 11, so they're a riser for me. I have the Cardinals at number 15. The Cardinals were number 21 last month, so they move up 6 spots. And I have the Padres at number 11. They were number 19 last month. And more than anything else, what this is saying is that the middle class of baseball, if you go 2 or 3 days and you get hot, you're moving up, because there's so many teams right around the 500 mark who could make a run in a wild card berth.
Is that a good thing?
No, I've been debating this to myself. I don't love it. I feel like all of these teams are not they're not super exciting, right? To me right now, I think there's a lot of mediocrity, and I don't know if this is like because we're expanding the playoffs, teams feel like they don't have to spend as much to improve, because the chances of getting a playoff berth are like, if you're around 500, you're in the mix, you know? So what is the incentive to spend extra in that case?
Yeah, that's my whole issue. And I think it's just going to get worse as we get more data and more evidence that you can kind of hang around. And the other thing is, you know, you look at a lot of these contenders that we're talking about, and there are significant holes in pretty much everybody except for really the Yankees and the Phillies, right? Like you look at them and you go, boy, we need to make this move. Why make moves now? there's no point in making any moves until right around the deadline, except for the teams that are in the major doldrums, and those teams don't have anything people want. So it just kind of makes this boring is the wrong term, but it makes it a little bit less interesting to me. Like, it's not to have this much mediocrity on top of having some teams that are just absolute disasters and don't give a what about winning. To have that combination is not my favorite thing. Once the postseason comes around, it's kind of fun to watch. It is fun to watch the guys just having more extra baseball. It's fun, especially after watching. I love my job, but watching Miami against the White Sox is not a whole heck of a lot of fun sometimes. There is something about getting some more quality games, but the quantity can be pretty rough.
Right, for sure. And hey, we still have almost 4 months to go, so have fun with that.
Thank you.
The Rangers, I think, are interesting as well. Yeah. They moved up 2 spots in my ranking to number 13, but I think it's a matter of the pitching getting healthy for the Rangers, and what they get out of these young position players. Wyatt Langford's back from the injured list now. Evan Carter is hurt, but struggled before the injury. What the Rangers can get out of him too. Adolis Garcia had a terrible May as well. But I think the key to the Rangers potentially rising in the standings is getting that pitching on track, whether it's Scherzer or Tyler Mahle. Jacob deGrom may return later this year. They have some ingredients there that could come together late in the season.
Yeah. And, I absolutely hate when people say, well, we didn't need to make a trade. Picking up Max Scherzer was our trade deadline edition, or Jacob deGrom or Tyler Mahle. Right. It is kind of accurate with the Rangers. Like, they have some guys who hopefully, barring setback, are going to make a big contribution for them. And even if, there are setbacks, they have a good enough farm system that they can go out and get some players as well. A big thing for them was Corey Seager was just terrible to begin the year. Right. He's been, you wrote about it in the article, Aaron Judge is the star, but if it wasn't for Aaron Judge, Corey Seager would be the hottest player in baseball right now. Every time I look, he's getting 3 hits, he's picking up a homer, and playing at the level that we expected him to play at. And Marcus Semion's starting to play a little better at the top of that lineup as well. The Rangers have as much talent, if not more, than the Mariners. It's just that their flaws, I think, are a little more ingrained into them than Seattle's are right now.
So the Cardinals, we know them as a veteran ball club, right? Sure. Whether it's the rotation or the lineup, but Mason Wynn has been fantastic for them recently. He made an error on Sunday Night Baseball, which was weird for him because he's such a good shortstop, but he's been on an amazing run. I think he hit over 300 in April and over 300 in May, finding himself near the top of the Cardinals lineup as well, which is really cool. For people maybe that haven't watched a lot of Mason Wynn yet, what have you seen from him so far? What have you liked?
Everything. And this was a guy I liked an awful lot coming into 2023. I thought he was being vastly underrated in the prospect lists. And, I think that we are talking about a much more well-rounded player than people think. His defense and his throwing, watching him throw, I would love to have a Mason Wynn v. Ellie De La Cruz throw off. I think that would be something I would absolutely watch. When one of those players gets hurt in it, I will be banned to the gulag, and I understand how that works. But he's just such a complete player. His approach is better. He's assertive at the plate. He's not super aggressive. He's not also going up there looking for walks like we talked about with Julien. I think he's a very solid player, and I think he's going to just keep getting better. He is still a young player. I also think it's worth pointing out, this was a two-way player coming out of high school. There were a lot of people who thought Mason Wynn should have been a pitcher coming out. The Cardinals clearly made the right choice and moved the guy to shortstop because its athleticism would be absolutely wasted there. It would not shock me if this was a top 10 shortstop in the coming years.
So another word here for our listeners, Indy 500 winner Joseph Newgarden looks to keep his momentum going this weekend as he battles the world's fastest drivers at Road America. Tune in Sunday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern on NBC and Peacock to see who takes the checkered flag in Wisconsin. So we talked about the good. Now want to talk about the bad of this month's power rankings. I'm going to start with the Braves, which is weird to say. They were number 1 in my rankings last month. They're down to number 8 right now. And to me, when I wrote this piece last month, I called the Braves strangely vulnerable.
Yeah.
And that was after they lost Spencer Strider, but before they lost Ronald Acuna Jr. So losing Acuna, another torn ACL, I mean, that's awful, to lose one of the game's top stars to another ACL injury. And I'd be interested to get your take. I mentioned this in our Q&A that we do every Tuesday. I mentioned this with Eric Samolsky last week, but you have a player now back to back, or both ACLs have now been torn. He's dealt with other injuries as well. Does this, when he comes back, does that impact him psychologically playing? Is he going to be, less willing to take chances on the base path, less aggressive in the field as well? Does it change the type of player that he is moving forward?
So I don't think it's going to change him based on the people I've talked to with Acuna. I don't think it's going to change him. I think it's going to change what Atlanta does with him considerably, because they are going to want to protect the heck out of this kid. They are going to, not just for the sake of Ronald Acuna, for the sake of their team. They need this guy to be on the field. I mean, that outfield just doesn't look as good anymore. Not even close. Jarred Kelenic, Adam Duvall, Michael Harris. It's a far cry from what happens when you have Kelenic and Duvall rotating. And Michael Harris hasn't been very good this year. Flat out just has not. In fact, the last time I looked, Kelenic had better numbers than Michael Harris, and Kelnic's numbers weren't that great either. So that is not a great sign for them. So I don't think it's going to be Acuna that's less aggressive. I think that the Braves are going to say, slow down, man. We have to keep you healthy. We keep the slow and bases to a low roar. I would imagine very few. Well, here's the thing, too. Everybody talks about these headfirst slides, that they're injuries. Maybe you want Ronald Acuna going head first with what's going on with his legs. And another concern here is Ronald Acuna is the perfect example of an unbelievably good baseball player, number one. And number two, athleticism doesn't equal good defense. Ronald Acuna was never a very good defensive player. Maybe you have to start thinking about him as the designated hitter. Maybe you have to start thinking about having him. And now the problem is that Marcell Ozuna is a words we're not allowed to say on this podcast, defender. So you have to have him as the designated hitter.
Right.
But long story short, to answer your question, you're not going to see Pete ever attempt 80 stolen bases again. I don't think you're ever going to see that version of Ronald Acuna again. And that sucks. That really sucks. Not only for the Braves, not only for fantasy managers, but just people who enjoy watching good baseball players have fun playing the sport.
Yeah, and with the Braves right now, Chris Sale was bad in his start over the weekend. Finally got hit around a little bit, but I think he was probably pitching above his weight.
Sure,
and he's a slender man so far this season. But what they've gotten out of Chris Sale has been amazing. Ronaldo Lopez same, but no Spencer Strider. Can Sale keep it up? He's obviously up there in age. Ronaldo Lopez. How many innings can you reasonably expect him to throw in that Braves rotation and maintain the pace that he's had so far? Max Fried's had some injury concerns as well. This lineup hasn't been firing on all cylinders. Over the past month, they've been one of the worst offenses in baseball, really, with Marcell Ozuna carrying the way for this lineup. So I still think they're a really good team. Don't get me wrong. They got Sean Murphy back from the IL, which helps. But a lot more questions than I would have expected coming into the year from top to bottom. Going into spring training, to me, they look like the best team in the National League, better than the Dodgers. But right now, I don't think that's the case.
No, I think that the Dodgers and the Phillies are both clearly ahead of them. And another thing worth pointing out here, not a great farm system. So you're not talking about a team that's going to be able, and not an organization that was really willing to move top prospects anyway. Like you've seen Atlanta, even when they make big moves for players like Sean Murphy, make moves for Jorge Soler and players like that of that ilk, it was never moving top prospects. They hold on to their guys, and the guys that they have available right now are well below average farm system.
So I have the Cubs at number 17. They're one of the other big fallers over the past month. They were number 8 in my power rankings last month. So falling 9 spots here. They've been really bad offensively over the past month. Only the White Sox have a worse team batting average over the past 30 days. I think the Cubs are a lot better than this.
Sure.
And I expect them to be in this wild card mix, which is why I'm keeping them kind of in respectable status. I think they're going to go on a run eventually. While I think I like them better than I like the Cardinals, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a more complete roster. You know, Imanaga has been sensational. He did have his, like you said, finally proved human in that most recent one. But I like, and you know, they've got some interesting young talents in the farm system too. Like they have some guys that I think can come up and help them. A Kevin Alcantara, an Owen Casey. We've seen Pete Crow Armstrong have some solid moments for them. Unfortunately, Cade Horton, one of their probably, in my opinion, the best minor league arm now that Livy Dunn's boyfriend is in the major leagues. That's just what we're going to call him. I'm sorry. That's just how it has to go.
Sorry.
But unfortunately, Cade Horton leaves with a hamstring issue in his last start because he's in AAA now. And I think he's somebody that they would really like to have be part of that rotation, especially with how bad some of those other arms have been. But overall, I think the Cubs are still, if they're not the most talented team in the NL Central, I think you have to give that to the Brew Crew at this point. I would put them as a solid number 2.
Do you want to know how cool I am, Chris?
Please.
I did not know who Livy Dunn was until like a month and a half ago.
What?
I knew who Paul Skeens was.
Sure.
So again, I'm just showing how cool I am. I knew Paul Skeens before I knew Livy Dunn. I think that's the opposite for most of America.
Yeah. That if we take a look at the Instagram followers, it's a little bit. But speaking of Livy Dunn, congratulations to Vanessa Hudgens. Her husband is a two-way player now. Cole Tucker.
Oh yeah,
two-way player.
You know what?
Good one, Vanessa.
He should. Yes, exactly. Vanessa Hudgens' husband. And he should maybe think about. Pitching. To be honest with you.
Yeah. The breaking ball looked pretty good, and he's got the flow for sure. Like that lettuce suggests like New York pitcher 2015 to 2018 is what he's got going on for sure.
Yes. I've had this theory, and we've seen it kind of with Matt Waldron with the Padres. The idea of like a knuckleball pitcher with someone who can throw like a low 90s fastball. Like, 100%. Why are there not more pitchers like that? Especially now where like there's so much focus on the max effort and constant injuries. Low 90s fastball pitchers can do that and they're going to be okay.
Sure.
Why are we not seeing more pitchers like that? And will we see more pitchers like that?
I wouldn't be shocked. As we keep making these adjustments, right? Like, you remember like 10 years ago, like a strikeout was just an out, and that like we made that move to the 3 true outcome player. And now we're realizing, strikeouts are actually really, really bad and the ball needs to be put in play. We're making this adjustments with pitchers as well. I think like finding out that just velocity, it makes a difference, but having those secondary offerings that can give hitters trouble timing wise, and that can play an effect, not just during that game, that can affect your timing for an entire series. Like not being used to that type of thing, especially like I want to see that in relief more often, man. Like seeing like relievers come in and really screw with these guys' timing, I think it's a good point. And I think the reason is just because you haven't gotten that chance to run the organization yet.
Okay. Well, hey, my MLB The Show team is going to be filled with custom knuckleballers. I might actually have a knuckleballer who can throw 100. You can do that in that game, and arms are not going to fall off. So
beautiful.
My 2 other big fallers over the past month, the Reds and the Mets. So, and I linked Elly De La Cruz and the Reds' fortunes together, which maybe is lazy, but like it feels about right for this team. And, a month ago we were saying, if we had to do fantasy drafts over again, maybe Elly De La Cruz would be a top 5 player.
Sure.
And maybe he would still in it, your standard head-to-head, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
But he's hit under 200 over the past month with a ton of strikeouts and not a lot of power either. And we've seen the Reds slide in the standings. I feel like the Reds are better than this, though.
Mm-hmm.
You have Hunter Green, you have Nick Lodolo headlining the rotation there. We're going to have Noel V. Marte come back from his PED suspension. I can see the Reds getting better as the summer moves along.
I won't make a chili joke, even though I really want to. But
Okay.
Eloy De La Cruz, I think, is look, when you have that long of levers, swing and miss is going to be an issue for you, unless you're Aaron Judge. And heck, Aaron Judge isn't immune to strikeouts. We've seen him pile them up as well. It's just really hard to make consistent contact when you have those kinds of swing mechanics. And outside of him having a drastic surgery to turn his arms into a more of a point guard than a small forward, that's always going to be an issue for him. He's going to have spurts. There are going to be spurts where this guy looks like the next best player in baseball. And there are going to be spurts where you say, not so fast, my friend. And right now he's on a not so fast, my friend type of thing. 46 to 11 K base on ball in the 29 games since the start of May. It's awful. It just can't get that done. And some of that is not just him having those long levers. Some of that is he's got to be more patient. And pitchers aren't going to just give in to him. So there's the opportunity there for some walks. Maybe they're not so scared of him right now because of how much he's swinging and missing, but his approach at the plate has to be better. They've had some other disappointments as well. Christian Encarnacion Strand, Spencer Steer's numbers aren't what we were hoping for, but they're talented. They have a lot of talent in that organization. I picked the Reds to win the division to begin the year. Still wouldn't completely rule them out, but it's looking less and less likely. Obvious point is obvious.
As you were talking about Elly De La Cruz, like some days he looks like the best player in baseball. If you were to stop someone on the street, random person, and ask them to name an MLB player, who do you think they would say? And would it be a current MLB player?
No, I don't think
player?
I'm pretty sure it would be a retired player. Like if you were just stopping somebody random on the street, I would guess that they would say, if you're within the area of the stadium, I think it's a little different. So let's like go into like rural Nebraska or something like that. Like, I think they're probably going to say Babe Ruth. They might say Barry Bonds, Mike Trout, someone along those lines. I don't think they're saying any current players. That's for sure.
I think Ohtani is our best shot. Maybe
Ohtani. Yeah. How did I forget about that guy?
Ohtani, Aaron Judge, but like taking those guys out of the mix. I mean, I think that's baseball's flaw right now.
100%.
Maybe Paul Skeens can help us.
Yeah. LDB. LDB, save us, man. You gotta get us that young crowd. You gotta get on those TikToks with her.
Yeah. What can we do to be hip? Listen to the show. That's what you can do.
There you go. Perfect.
So the Mets are the last faller I want to talk about. They've fallen 10 spots over the past month in my rankings and deserve every bit of it. We saw what happened with Jorge Lopez throwing the glove into the stands last week, which was not great. And then he was kind of misattributed with his quotes in the clubhouse after the game, which was unfortunate. We know he's going through some stuff personally with his son as well. So, you never know what's going on with somebody personally, but I do think a lot of his frustration in the moment was how things are going for the Mets. Right now. And we're talking about this like mediocrity across Major League Baseball. The Mets are a talented team, and that they are this bad, and seeing all the other teams that are around the 500 mark in the mix, that's what makes this like extra frustrating for me, because there's no reason they can't be in that grouping of teams as well.
No, I mean, there are some guys that like you absolutely want on this roster to be on your baseball team, right? Like there are some well above average to potential superstars on the team. Francisco Lindor is probably going to be a Hall of Famer. He has been one of the better shortstops in baseball. Pete Alonso has as much power as anybody. When Edwin Diaz has been healthy, he's been as dominant a closer as I've ever seen. But the overall grouping, this is clearly just not working. Like it is. Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the Jorge Lopez thing, because I had a chance to talk to Heidi Watney of Apple the other day about this situation. And she talked about how I think the Mets, and I don't want to crap on them too hard. That's a major PR
go for
fail.
It, please.
That's a major PR fail to not have somebody there to either stop that interview or to translate that interview is an absolute failure. And I wanted to ask you this because, you've worked in media for a long time. How long of a cool down do you think we need to give players before we start talking to them? Because so much of this can just be solved, in my humble estimation, not just having the right people there to talk to them, not just talking to people who actually want to talk, but also just giving those players a chance. And I know that they're not just burgeoning into the locker room right afterwards.
Yeah.
But I feel like there needs to be more of a cool down period before we're actually talking to these players.
So in this particular instance, when Lopez threw the glove into the stands, they lost the game. Lindor and Nimmo, I believe, called a team meeting. And I don't know if they were talking specifically about the glove throwing thing or just like, hey, guys, we got to get it together or whatever. I don't even know if the manager talked to Lopez. You know what I mean? I feel like that should have happened if it didn't, but I don't know if it did.
There were two different claims. Escobar claims that he didn't talk to him. Lopez claims that he did. So, and that could also be a translation gaffe as well. But it seems like such an avoidable thing. And it's not like Jorge Lopez. I mean, he wasn't pitching great. It's not like he was like terrible. He was having a decent little season. I don't know. And I also wonder if the repeating the teammate thing, saying I'm the worst teammate thing, was maybe something that got said to him during that team meeting.
Oh, it's possible. Yeah, for sure. Either way, like I think given the way that it played out,
sure,
it's probably better if he's not on the Mets.
I 100% agree.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. He may end up with really the worst team in baseball if he goes to like the White Sox or the Angels. I would not rule that out.
No, I wouldn't either.
That would be a way to put a bow on that whole situation. But go ahead and check out the Power Rankings article. Go to NBCSports.com. Go into the fantasy baseball section. You will see it right there. And we'll put a bow on this show as well. Chris, this was a lot of fun. And we'll have you right back here on Wednesday. Scott Pianowski will be back. And I get to live my game show host dreams. Stay tuned for that. It will be a lot of fun. One of my favorite games to play. Remember to subscribe to the Rotoworld Baseball Show wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Twitter or X if you don't already. I'm at DJ Short. Chris is at Crawford_MILB. Take care, everyone. We will see you next time.